Okay, so this is getting out way later than I thought it would, but it's officially that time too late again. It's time for me to reveal my picks for the top 10 films of last year, which this year is 2017, in case you had forgotten. These are my picks, which means they're better than yours. No, there is not something for everyone on this list. I'm not a psychic. I don't care what you like. But I would like to give you some options for current viewing either on a laptop or in a theater, alone, with your main chick, or your side piece. But first, we're going to start off with the very worst. Wish Upon somehow managed to be the worst PG-13 horror movie perhaps ever made, so bad that I wondered if it was a spoof of the genre. But the annual Nutsuck Award goes to Daddy's Home 2, a lifeless, laughless, dismal movie that wasted so many opportunities, especially for Mel Gibson to play the raucous, edgy grandpa. Not a single gag in this movie works. It is unwatchable. I left halfway through. This is rancid baby raccoon shit. Stay the fuck away. We got one more subgenre before the list. For the most overrated film of the year, there are several contenders. Steven Spielberg's The Post was dull and disappointing, as was Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. But thanks to some plagiarism accusations pointed at del Toro, the latter film has fallen in stature a bit. There's always a ripe opportunity to rip on the bogus Snore Wars franchise, but the most overrated film of 2017 would have to be Martin McDonagh's Coen Brothers ripoff, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. For the record, I didn't think this was a terrible movie. Everybody acts the shit out of their parts. There are some funny individual moments. But the constant tonal shifts are not only uncomfortable, they rarely make sense or add up to anything meaningful. Some scenes go from a deranged dark comedy to a sappy drama in a single cough, literally, and the plot ends up suffering from a lack of structure. The plot just kind of zigzags from one overbearing scene to the next. I shit you not, over the course of a single scene, Frances McDormand's son, 1. Calls her a cunt, 2. Answers the door for his father and is happy to see him, 3. Is holding a knife to his throat for no fucking reason 2 seconds later. It is the most ham-fisted playhouse theater bullshit where nothing is explained and there's no fluidity to the action. I was expecting so much more from this, not just from the reviews but from the big names attached. I was pretty disappointed that it didn't even come close to the hype. In other words, it isn't a bad film, but it fucking sucks. Now for the final list. Number 10, Hostiles. This is another film from the understated and underrated Scott Cooper. His films are never going to stop being shit on by the elitist critics because he's a little old-fashioned. And this is just that, a traditional Western, so of course it has been accused of various crimes against humanity, such as humanizing racism and ignoring the native characters. First of all, on that first count of humanizing racism, racism is every bit as human a concept as tolerance. Therefore, you can absolutely focus on it as a human concept. The best villains in any movie are given humanity. Why should a racist be any different? And I think this film mostly pulls that off. Secondly, the Indians in the film are every bit as traditional as the white characters. They're still the wise, mystical, tobacco-smoking counterparts to the whites' loose bigotry, so if you're gonna criticize only the native characters for being too hokey, then you're singling them out for an attack because you're a racist nativist pig. Nativist, a word which ironically implies that whites are the real natives. Ha 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 ha! I love how the left can't even get their insults correct by their own standards. No, the story is nothing groundbreaking, I'll admit. There's a reason this film is number 10 on my list. I don't think there were even 10 really great movies in 2017. Now, I could wait until 2019 to make this list and watch every single disc that got kicked under the stove like YMS does, and I do respect that approach, but I'm a comedian and I'm just not that committed. Most French films are like chloroform to me, and that's why I put Hostiles on this list. Because this is the end of the line for me, in terms of compiling this list. And I still like this film a great deal. The ending is cornier than a native's toothbrush, but overall, the film is carried by strong performances and poetic dialogue. Christian Bale is excellent as a former Union soldier who was ordered by the president to accompany a group of Indians to their home in Montana. At first, he's racist, But then, you guessed it, he slowly becomes not so racist. Again, not an original idea, but this film executes it surprisingly well. It's beautifully shot and well paced. Rosamund Pike cranks it up to 10 in one of the best crying scenes I've seen in a long time. I actually wanted to pause the movie and ask her character, "Yo, you alright? You need a drink of water or something, you grief-stricken bitch?" But her character also comes into her own by the end. Hostiles is simply a solid classic western. It's not awesome like The Revenant, it's not my favorite film from Scott Cooper, that would be Out of the Furnace, also starring Christian Bale, but I still recommend this one to any fans of the genre. Number 9. Brawl in Cell Block 99. Well, didn't that just work out numerically satisfying? Vince Vaughn, yeah, you heard right, this motherfucker at 47 finally stumbles upon a decent role. He plays Bradley Thomas, a man with a violent past who gets caught in a drug bust and sent to prison. Upon his arrival, he is soon forced between a cock and a hard place by some old friends. From that point forward, we witness this short-tempered, tough guy with superhuman strength turn every authority he's confronted with into a pulp, timing each move just right. This film is exquisitely timed for suspense. All the while, we're taken into the deepest and darkest confines of the prison system. It's really a perfect concept for a video game as well as a movie. It's fucking badass, one of the year's most overlooked, not just for its vigilante action reminiscent of Death Wish and Rambo, but Vince Vaughn gives by far his best performance. He is Fred Claus no more. Thomas is a character who never changes, who doesn't once falter in the face of adversity, because he's got a reason, and that reason is what drives him. Simple as that. The best movies are often simpler than a first-grade special ed exam. Number 8, The Florida Project. This movie is truly an anomaly. The only reason I didn't place it higher on this list is because its central characters are these feral, disgusting, shitball kids, and the movie focuses a bit too much on them for my liking. Otherwise, this film affected me in a way few movies ever have. People have compared it to The Bicycle Thief and its neo-realistic take on everyday slum life. But this is not a slum we see too often in movies. This is a beautiful, colorful portrait of a seedy motel mere miles from Disney World in the swamps of Orlando. Willem Dafoe stands out as the property manager, one of the great performances of the year. He has to be stern with his residents, but at the same time, he's kind of a pushover who spends his day doing fool's errands like cleaning up their piss and shit. He has the thankless job of chasing human rodents through his building, and he deserves an Oscar for it. Having spent a lot of time in Florida myself, I've witnessed firsthand the types of people this movie lingers on, and these caricatures are spot on. This film got me thinking about childhood, what it means to grow up destitute, running free, as opposed to being shut in, fed up, and emotionally crippled like me. I loved a lot of this movie. It's not without its flaws. I didn't care much for the close-ups of people chewing with their mouths open. Like, I get it, they're slovenly, subhuman animals. You don't have to show me in lurid detail. And I could go either way with the much-debated ending. It didn't bother me too much. This is not a movie I'd see again, but it's one that's hard to forget once you have seen it, and I sincerely recommend it. Number 7, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Here's a great film that's not easy to describe. Yorgos Lanthimos has created a wacky and bleak rendition on the Greek tragedy of Iphigenia, and has shot it in a way that's eerily similar to The Shining, and the result is both hilarious and tragic. I hadn't seen The Lobster before I saw this, and that made this film seem all the more unique to me. The characters are endlessly fascinating. Lanthimos manages to make them seem not of this world, while still making their conflicts somewhat relatable. More and more so as the film gradually becomes darker and more twisted. If you're a fan of the morbid and the absurd like me, this is the film for you. If you're not, I will laugh at you. Ha 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 ha. Number 6, Molly's Game. I'm going to put a big disclaimer ahead of my review for this one. If you are a high IQ individual who enjoys page after page of stimulating dialogue, this is the film for you. The rest of us may not be quick enough to catch on to some of it, including myself. And what the fuck did you expect from an Aaron Sorkin movie? Fuck that homework. Save your Adderall for this film. If you can catch these rapid-fire monologues within dialogue spraying out of these actors' mouths like projectile vomit, you might find that this story reads like a good pulp novel, or one of those screwball comedies from the 30s. Jessica Chastain plays to her strengths, both acting-wise and tits-wise. I know I'm not the first person to comment on the obvious, and I won't be the last. Who says you can't be a great actress and have nice tits? Feminists? Fuck 'em. I admire a great film for all of its qualities, and I will talk about any of them at any length. Idris Elba is terrific as well. All the performances are entertaining. The editing is swift and never slows down. The cinematography is nothing special, but the film more than makes up for that in other areas. This is one fucking entertaining movie. Kinda like I, Tonya, which didn't quite make the cut for my list. This is a film about a strong woman who makes a name for herself, only this one is more intense and better written. There's at least one minor plot contrivance I took issue with, and it involves Kevin Costner in the role of Molly's dad. Every now and again he interrupts the movie to give context to her character or some shit, and he's more of a plot device than a character. But even when his input seems out of place, I would argue that it still works. As I said, if you liked any of Sorkin's work in the past, especially some of his best like The Social Network, I think this film belongs in that echelon. Number 5, Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan. That's it. After all this time, I thought you got lost up the galaxy of your own ass with your sprawling space epics and shit. Now you crank out a tightly wound war film with explosions every 5 minutes and a stopwatch as the soundtrack. With 3 stories on different timelines all meeting up at the same destination at the same time? Word? Sounds like a movie to me. Once again, there's butt-clenching tension in almost every scene. Either you're on the edge of your seat or you're holding in a shit. Either way, this is a great movie. Instead of 10 scenes that severely cripple the story, here we only have one really dumb scene that stands out like a white guy in the basketball court. But still, much improvement in the editing room. The music is intense, but the mixing is still dog shit. Big surprise. Hans Zimmer's score consistently drowns out any chance of making out what the people are saying. In Interstellar, this was a huge problem, but in Dunkirk, they're literally drowning under sinking vessels anyway, so I guess that's all we need to know. Regardless of this movie's flaws, this movie grabs a hold of you like you're about to kill yourself and doesn't let go. People are going to look back on this as one of the great war films, despite Nolan's shortcomings as a director. Number 4, The Lost City of Z. When was the last time you've seen an epic with this much ambition? There Will Be Blood, I'd argue, but then Lawrence of Arabia before that. James Gray lands another massively underrated period piece, taking place in England before and after World War I. Charlie Hunnam plays Percy Fawcett, a soldier-turned-explorer who is recruited on a mission by the Royal Geographic Society to sail to the Amazon and claim findings for Queen and Country. On his first journey, he hears tales of a lost city of gold where no white man has been before, and over the years and several failures, he becomes obsessed with finding it. One of the great gifts of the period piece is how flexible of a genre it is, especially the ones about the English upper class. The facade may seem benign on the surface, but this story is really about greed and personal conquest. The characters are all multi-layered and funny. There's a lot of double-crossing going on. The film is at its funniest when it pokes fun at the aristocracy. And because this is a fucking epic, we are taken from there to the trenches of World War I in a stunning reenactment of the Battle of the Somme. Within a single lifetime, we accompany Fawcett in all his hubris and anguish as he dreams of the lost city. This film is a stunning achievement that I think a lot of people are going to look back on in a few years. Number 3, Good Time. Robert Pattinson has been killing it lately. He was also in The Lost City of Z, and with Good Time he completely immerses himself in his role like a young Pacino. His name's Connie, even that sounds like a Pacino character. This is another great performance full of tics that fit the character and add depth to his story even if we never know that much about him. This is a film with its own unique style, while it still manages to ratchet up tension in every frame. The story is so gripping it'll leave you with bruises after watching it, as it throws you naked and handcuffed from one place to the next like a fraternity hazing. You won't know what's gonna happen next until it happens next, and then you still won't know what happens next. Fucking watch this movie or get a visit from my crew. That's what happens next. At number 2, John Wick Chapter 2. Uh-oh, he's back! Boom! Smack! John Wick coming to light your ass up. Russian mobsters, Italian mobsters, Guatemalan mobsters, a mobster hotel keeper, a mobster gun store clerk, a mobster tailor. This movie is about mobsters, the crime underworld. The second chapter of this vengeance-driven madman explores this crime-driven economy that the first movie only hinted at. They have their own currency, they have their own means of living, they have their own codes of honor, and yet John Wick doesn't give a fuck about any of it. Keanu Reeves rightfully reclaims his title as an action star. This guy is the Grim Reaper. He will not change his mind once he marks you for death. When he picks you, you will die and you will sit your ass down and accept it. John Wick 2 is not just an action movie. It takes risks with its story that we can only hope will pay off in the third film. This is a series with a seemingly boundless imagination, and that is worth something in this age of bloodless, sanitized, lame Jason Bourne action heroes. There is minimal exposition, no bullshit love interest to stop the hero in his tracks, no long fuck scene in the middle of the story like some other movies this year. This is non-stop, hardcore, ball-busting action, and if you haven't seen it, that's your homework assignment. And finally, number 1, Phantom Thread. To reiterate one of my earlier points, I think the English costume drama is becoming one of the most diverse genres out there. An ambitious director is able to stitch so many hidden messages into the fabric, just the way famed dressmaker Reynolds Woodcock does. This is another case where the best film of the year is the simplest, or perhaps in this case, deceptively so. In the latest work of genius from Paul Thomas Anderson, the characters are driven by a single need, and seek to fulfill it in a single way. The fun of it is just finding what that is. Daniel Day-Lewis is wonderful as an autistic artist who falls in love with a naive German waitress. Once again, we are treated to some upper-class hysterics that made me want to jam a fork in my eye at the pompousness. Ask me what's the best made film of the year, it is no contest. This film is ravishing. The score is breathtaking. The acting is flawless. The scenes with food, for fuck's sake, are purposefully exaggerated to represent the main character's point of view. The characters are never quite who you think they are. Every 10 years since Boogie Nights, Paul Thomas Anderson has held the top spot on my list, so I have no reason to doubt that 2027 will be another milestone. And that's the list. I hope my channel offers something of interest to you. You can follow me on the alternative vlog site DTube if you want to help make me a little cryptocurrency. You can also follow me on various social media in the links below. Thanks for watching. Until next time, let's keep on raging for the win. Fuck yes.